So this is a panel about the future of synthesis, and specifically around a technology called physical modeling synthesis, and also additionally other expressive synthesis technologies. And I'm just going to briefly introduce the panelists, and then each panelist is going to present about 4 minutes of their perspective on this technology, and I'm going to keep mine extremely brief. And then we're going to go into a set of discussion questions. So first off, my name is Pat Scandalis, and I'm the CTO of a company called Moforte Inc. I've been working in this area of physical modeling for close to 25 years. It's a very interesting area for me. On Skype, we have Dr. Julius Smith, who is really the father of this technology. And he's at Stanford right now. He does not see us, I think, so he doesn't know that we're seeing him. And then we also have Linn, one of my heroes, who has been working on interesting multidimensional controllers, which are a really perfect marriage with physical modeling and expressive technologies. And then we have Jordan Rudess, who's been an artist advocate for these technologies for a long time, and who I work with very closely on a product. And then we also have, come back here, we have Stefano Liccato, who is one of the designers of the Swan musical instruments. And assisting Stefano is going to be Lele, who is going to act as his translator. And then finally we have Stefan Schmidt, who has this very interesting synthesizer that mixes FM and physical modeling technologies and makes very interesting sounds. And someone on the Skype side is tapping something. I'll just let you know that. So, okay, so I'm going to start it out here with my very brief couple minutes, and then I'll hand it over to Julius. I'll just go through the panelists in the order that we have here. My company makes a product called GeoShred, and I really won't spend much time on it, but it's based on physical modeling. It's a very interesting controller and synthesis product, and it's got this unique performance surface that allows users to fluidly slide all around the performance surface. And the performance surface has been paired with a physical model of strings. And we've had quite a few people do interesting things with this. The very interesting thing to me is that because of the way that music works in India, a number of performers in India have picked up on it because they love the fluidity of sliding around. I do want to say, in the area of physical modeling, if you want to take a picture of this, this will be really quick, but we have a full deck about the history of physical modeling. If you don't get this in your photo, just go to moforte.com, go to the blog, News and Media, and it's the first posting that's there. It's about a 60-page deck, and it's full of nice sound examples, and the history goes all the way back to 1939. So just for context, and that's really what I want to do, is set the context and let the panelists really go to town here, is what is physical modeling? So it's a type of synthesis technology in which we use mathematical models to model the source of the sound. And so what this means is gestures that are in the original system, be it a saxophone or a guitar or a bowed string, those gestures can be used to interact with the model, and it creates a very natural kind of performance experience. The one thing to say is that physical modeling really is not just one type of synthesis, it's a collection of different algorithms. So why? Why physical modeling? So as performing musicians, our job is to translate a emotional musical performance into something that the audience can understand, and that has to do with expression. And so that's what physical modeling is very interesting about, is that you can take these physical parameters and translate them into things that people understand emotionally from cultural context. I'm just going to play a quick little example from you, and then I will go ahead and turn it over to the panel. It's a saxophone. Being played on GeoShred. When he presses into the screen, it growls. So, okay, I'm going to turn it over to the next panelist, and that's going to be a panelist we have up on Skype. Julius is the next panelist, and so I'll go ahead and bring the panelist folks up here. So Julius, we're going to make you the foreground. Let's see if we can get...
Do you see my first slide?
We do, but can you move your camera just a little bit because the built-in window is blocking it?
I have to stay in this zone right here, right?
Yeah. Why don't you rotate...
Julius, if you Julius, move your head 1 foot to the right, and we can see both your head and the screen.
That's right.
A little more.
Oh, I see. Wait a minute.
There you go. Yeah.
So when I think about physical modeling and why it's got a sort of a new impetus today, it's the same reason it has a new impetus every year, is because the computers are getting faster and you can do more. And so this first slide gives you some history of the iOS processors in the iPhone, the ARM processors, and there's an arrow at the iPhone 4S, which is what GeoShred 1.0 supports. It's about the iPad 2. And all 6 strings, physically modeled strings, and all somebody needs to mute. And the power curve has gone up so much, and this only takes you up to iPhone 6S, and so iPhone 11 is somewhere up in the upper right corner. I don't even know where exactly. So you can see that we've got this incredible amount of power that we can start to harness. And so the realism of the physical models can go all the way out to what you can't tell the difference in many, many categories. And so we're just going to keep adding those categories sort of opportunistically. Like I think strings might be the easiest, and we'll just kind of keep adding higher degrees of realism, and then just see how far we can push it. And in the second curve, you see the GPU. So both the CPU and the GPU have been growing pretty close to exponentially, and we just are going to ride that wave and really, really enjoy it. So that's a huge enabling technology that allows a lot more to happen. And things have been understood for quite a while. In a lot of cases, there's always some corner cases we don't completely understand. We don't have completely great models for, but many, many cases we understand have not yet been implemented. So it's time to get them clear. So for example, here's a Fender Bassman schematic, the tube amp, 4 tubes, and showing what its diagram looks like as a wave digital filter. That model takes on the order of an entire ARM processor, so it's still quite expensive, but it's an example of the kind of thing we can start to afford and really do. So you can really have a fine tube amp running as a real model in your rig, so to speak. And another huge impetus is the multi-touch screens. This is something I'm excited about, but of course there are many, many types of controllers. There's a whole conference on controllers, the NAMM conference, and so we have a lot of new capabilities. So in the iPad, you can get all 10 fingers going and moving them around in X and Y. So that's 20 dimensions of control. That's a huge amount of control. And then the instrument adds a Z coordinate, so you have 30 dimensions. You have X, Y, and Z. And there are other 3-dimensional controllers, 3D touch on the iPhone, but unfortunately that seems to be discontinued. But the rolling instruments, there are 3D keyboards out there, so X, Y, and Z, the continuum. So there's a lot of options growing in that direction, so it's a lot of possibility. And 30 dimensions is not even the whole story, because one thing you might not know is that just one continuous stroke is an infinite dimensional controller. So basically all the derivatives and all the integrals of any continuous arc are independent. So you do a stroke, and then you have a vector of unbounded dimensions. There's no limit to how many dimensions of control you can extract from one stroke. Of course, it gets harder when you get to the 15th derivative or the 24th integral. It's hard to independently control them, but they're there. And so that's another huge expressivity space. So expression space is exploding, and we can also get low latency connections to these physical models. Even standard off-the-shelf software is doing quite well, and special hardware is going to be completely amazing. 1 microsecond latency. So I think that's probably my 4 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Julius, very much. So you're painting a bright future for this technology. Next, we're going to go to you, Stefano.
Sorry for my poor English.
Yeah.
I'm Stefano Lucato, CEO of Audio Modeling and Sound Designer. And we develop virtual expressive instrument by different approach, but mainly by physical modeling approach and some other hybrid approach. What I love of physical modeling is that mainly the instrument not only is expressive but reacts the way the instrument, the player play the keyboard or other device, multidimensional device. So there is a sort of strange effect. There is not only the instrument reacts to the way you play, but you react to the reaction of the instrument. So you change the way you play, mainly. For example, when I play a violin or flute, I increase the intensity. The flute engage the overtones. But when these overtones are engaged, I change the way I play because I reduce the intensity of the blow. So these instruments are also give inspiration when you play. This is the big difference when you play a real instrument and you play, for example, a sample library, because a sample library has a very good sound, but is played by another musician. The articulation is inside your sound already recorded. So our company are focused mainly to develop this type of this instrument. And I can show now one example of this violin and the cello.
Solo strings are instruments based on physical modeling, so it is possible to control the main mechanical variables in real time: bow position, speed and pressure, position of the finger on the string, even simultaneously. For example, we can combine a more or less rapid portamento during a crescendo or a diminuendo while we are playing a tremolo. There is indeed no limit to the number of possible combinations.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is a total physical model instrument. For me, I created this instrument, but for me, it's unbelievable to listen the final result. It's always a surprise. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So next will be Stefan Schmidt. He's going to be talking about his wonderful technology.
Okay, thanks for the patience. Yeah, my name is Stefan Schmidt. I'm from Violin, Germany. My background is electrical engineering, so I studied electrical engineering. I was in the communications industry and free internet. Just a moment. Okay, let's go. And in the 90s, I founded Native Instruments, and the main product, or the first product, was Reactor. Maybe some of you might know that. And it's a thing that is a very open system to combine kind of modules, radical modularity, down to the very small element. And it has been used for creating instruments, effects, sequencers, lots of stuff. And also the instruments of Native Instruments also are prototyped in this environment. And there is always, say, the option, say, you can stay with the typical electronic signal sources, and say emulate them in software, or you can think, okay, what else is possible? Where can we go with this sort of modules, with delays, with filters, and then you come also to the field of physical modeling. Actually, it was funny when we announced that Reactor would also offer the possibility to do physical modeling. We got an email from the Karma that we could license something. Okay. We never licensed, sorry. Okay, in 2012, I have left Native Instruments and I founded another company, NAMM, and we have one product out now. It's the C15. It's very much back to hardware. So Native was all preaching software is better than hardware, but I want people to focus on an instrument that is a physical thing, that is playable, and that's something also sustainable for a long time, and keep the attention. While with plugins, you have hundreds of plugins on your computers, probably, and you don't know them very well, typically. It's a polyphonic digital instrument. It is, you could call this a synthesizer, but there are some expectations about synthesizers. What is a typical synthesizer? So we prefer to call it instrument. It has a hybrid sound engine that can, in many cases, behave similar to physical modeling, but we don't do the pure science. We don't even know enough probably about this science, so we don't have this academic research done. But it's more like an evolution and experience what we can do with certain function blocks, and that's what we also give to our users. So I will show you a lot of these diagrams now, or not a lot, but some stages of this. You see that we have a sound engine that is built from, let's say, two parts. One is two oscillators, mainly two oscillators, just sine wave oscillators, and two filters. The one is, the comp filter is delay based, and this is something that's used in waveguide synthesis environments. And the other one is a very flexible multi-mode filter, the state variable filter. Then we have an output mixer, the effects chain here, and what is interesting is the feedback mixer. You can take the signal and put it back into the loop. We try to keep all switches out so you can morph from one setting to the other. It's very, let's say, very flexible and fluid. We don't use any complex data, so there's not a lot of, let's say, there are not sampled waveforms in there. There are not any, let's say, impulse responses or something like this. It's just simple mathematical functions, very primitive, you can say. Sine wave oscillators, sine shapers, a comp filter. Okay, there is, in the comp filter there is a delay, an all pass and a low pass. The state variable filter is a flexible thing with two pole filters. But the rest is just mixing, crossfading, opening up signal paths. So some of the signal paths I want to show. So we have phase modulation input at the oscillator, so we can get a complex spectrum from simple sine wave oscillators. And I want to keep it puristic, so I don't offer other waveforms. I want people to use the phase modulation and the shaping, which is kind of a distortion behind the oscillators, which also has sine-shaped curves. So everything is very much in this sine domain. And all this sound can already be quite interesting and quite, say, also natural, as FM has this potential to sound natural, especially with melodies and so on. And so just we take the signals and bring them out, and that's it. Next stage, or next approach, subtractive synthesis. So you have complex waveforms, you have spectrum where you can cut away something. So this can be done by running it through the state variable filter. This gets more interesting for this audience here. We call it exciter resonator, and it's so the left side is creating maybe only a short burst or some noisy stuff, and we use the resonator, the comp filter, to classically to create a plugged instrument or something like this. And but of course we could also use this filter and other elements to enrich or to modify the sound. It's very open in that way. And want to show how much feedback we also allow. So you can go back from the comp filter to a feedback mixer. You can get from the state variable filter and from the output. So you can create sounds that sound like a guitar played in a room with an amp, with a loud amp, with feedback. Because this is a guy. Excuse me? The cabinet is kind of an amp, creating some amp style of distortion. We go through reverb, we go back, and we feedback the signal into the comp filter, and this is like re-exciting the string. Also, quite interesting is to use feedback signals for phase modulation, and then things get really complicated or really complex. If you combine filters, delays, feedback, and non-linearities. This is always the principle of chaos, or how to create chaos. And that's so it's a structure that is really open for lots of experimentation. And it's quite a challenge for the users, but we want to give the users not a finished model. We want to give them just these components and give them or make them or empower them to do their own experiments. How do we get this expressive? Here we are not at the, let's say, at the forefront of development. We don't have multidimensional controls up to now. So just take a very good keyboard and have a very high resolved velocity thing. Velocity. This is the main thing especially for percussive sounds, and I mean the piano, where there is a percussive instrument in a way. And so that's the first. Then we have aftertouch, we have pedals, we have lots of other possibilities to influence the signal in real time. We have a bender. This is an element because we don't have LFOs. We want everything happen in real time, and that's what you can do there on the magnetic loaded bender. Running off that? Yeah. Okay. So that's actually how can it sound like? It can sound like like a classical synthesizer. It can also sound like a plucked or a mallet instrument or a bowed string, flutes, a lot of stuff. But we are not striving for the maximum realism. It's more to give people the chance to get a very playable, inspiring instrument. That's the main goal of the whole thing. Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much. Okay, next we're going to bring in Jordan and then Roger. Jordan is in Finland. We appreciate that he's doing this.
Sure. So, first of all, I appreciate being here with all of you because I'm a fan of each and every one of you that's here today, and you guys are keeping my mind and my music expressive and exciting and constantly inspiring. So I really, think it's wonderful that we can all gather, and also to just have the opportunity to speak as an artist about where things are and where maybe things are going. First of all, I'm very excited that I'm involved with people that are doing physical modeling and all the other sound technologies. I happen to have one of Stefan's synthesizers, and I think it's really, really amazing. So all the different technologies that are out there that are kind of pushing the boundaries and taking advantage of the latest processors, like Julius was saying, physical modeling is just getting better because the machines keep on getting better. I just think it's an amazing time to be around and working with sound. But I really think that we've reached such a high level of producing sound, and there's so many great, amazing, fun ways to make sound, that a big part of what I'm looking for as an artist is putting it all together in a way that makes sense to take the human expressive experience and bring it up to another level. And that's why I've, for many years, been involved with instruments like Roger's Linn instrument and Continuum and my own GeoShred. And recently I tried a wonderful new keyboard called Osmos by Expressive E. And of course I should say the Seaboard as well. And these kind of technologies combined with a technology like physical modeling start bringing out the real magic and the beauty of the whole experience. Because with a technology like physical modeling, it's extremely organic. It's not like a sample player where you're just playing little snapshots, even if you have a lot of them. With physical modeling, everything is kind of seamless as the tone changes. Like I play every night with Dream Theater, I have my GeoShred app, and I'm playing the string model, and I play kind of one of the sounds I play is a really rockin' lead sound. I wonder if I could even do it for a second. Let's see, guys, Pat, let's see my screen here.
You can sort of see, yeah.
Can you see a little bit?
Yeah, maybe this would be...
All right, well, I'll play for a second. We'll see it. Like that. So, and what I mean is, like with the model, you can play a note and you can really express it, and you can do things like getting feedback. So I can do, and it's so organic. And that kind of thing just has a different feeling than playing with any sample that I have, anything based on sampling. So this is a very important technology to be aware of. And what's really interesting too is physical modeling, as Julius can tell you, around for a really long time. But one of the reasons that we haven't totally embraced it fully is because what we're offering musicians, what we're offering the artist, a lot of times there's a lot of parameters, there's a lot of sound that physical modeling can make that are a little hard for people to understand. So one of the things we try to do in GeoShred, for example, is give the user parameters that are musical, that are understandable. So yeah, this has been a great adventure working with all this, and I'm going to pass it on to the next guy.
Thank you, Jordan. Okay, we're going to move on to Roger, and then we'll move on to some questions. Okay, Roger, are you there?
So I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. First off, how many people in the audience know what physical modeling is? And Pat, can you tell me how many hands go up?
I will relay for you. There's probably a good 40 to 60, maybe even 70 people.
Probably a good 40 to 60.
What percentage?
Maybe 70% of the room.
Oh, okay. Well, just firstly, real briefly who I am. In the past, I've made drum machines, and I've ruined music by taking away all the expressivity by people making my drum machines. And so right now, I'm making an expressive keyboard that I call an instrument. And it's kind of like the continuum from Little Hawken or the Rolly keyboard that responds to 3 dimensions of control, or in Rolly speak, 5 dimensions, although my physicist friends won't let me say 5D because they know it's not correct, actually. But anyway, you get velocity, release velocity, left, right, forward, backward, and pressure. So anyway, what is physical modeling? If you don't understand it well, what it is it gives you the accuracy of samples and the harmonic richness, but with the malleability of synthesis. So for example, if you try to take a cello sample and you pitch bend it up an octave, it sounds like a munchkin. If you pitch bend it down an octave, it sounds like, you know, a 10-foot high double bass. Or if you try to vary the pressure, the note volume on samples, you have to switch between samples, and it's never quite natural. But in audio modeling cello, it's a physical model, so it's completely malleable. When I play it with instrument, I can control completely the bowing pressure. I can control the pitch and go up or down an octave. I can even move my finger back and forth and change the bow position that is being played with. It's absolutely phenomenal. And sampling, once you get into expressive controllers, sampling doesn't come close. So it's so exciting to me what audio modeling is doing. But then in addition to that, if you want to do new sounds, create new sounds through synthesis, it gives you the ability to have sounds that don't just sound buzzy and fuzzy like filtered oscillators, but have this wonderful harmonic richness of a physical instrument, but with a malleability of synthesis. So I just find it marvelous, and I won't do anything right now, but if you do want to hear some samples, go to my website, rogerlinn.com, L-I-N-N, and right on the front page, down in the news section at the bottom, there's a link to an article I wrote about physical modeling and a link to a video where I demonstrate some of those sounds. So anyway, that's all I have to say for the introduction. The only thing I'd say is, hey guys, all of us here, let's do a video dinner party sometime.
Okay, thank you very much, Roger. So I'm going to make a call here. I'm sort of watching people's body language in the audience, and we could go on to these questions, but I'm thinking what we should do is have people ask questions and direct them to the folks that are here. And so, does anybody have a question that they would like to ask to this group of people?
I do.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Mr.
I will repeat the question too.
Well, my name's Paul, and I have a question for Mr. Stefano, who played the violin. Are there other instruments that you can model with that same technology, or just the violin?
So let me repeat the question. So the question is, with the model for the violin, are there other instruments that you can model with that technology?
Well, Stefano should answer that.
Yes. With physical modeling, you can model all instrument, not only acoustic real instrument, but also very extreme instrument. You can model a cello with 1 kilometer of string, for example. Yes, it's probably will be a strange sound, but so it's very versatile because you work with physical variables, and you can change. For example, now we are working on brass instrument, trumpet, trombones, French horn, and I experiment empirically not only the length of the pipe, but also how much must be conical, or if I try, for example, I can change the French horn with 4 valves every French horn, but I can try how can sound a French horn with a slide, a coulisse slide, for example. You can in the real world is a lot of expensive to keep a brass. I try to make more conical. With physical model, you can also try a model and experimental to understand how can will be. Sorry for my English. Will sound. Okay, you understand what I mean?
Thank you.
Yes,
yes, thank you.
yes. It's very versatile, and powerful, and expressive technology. I falling in love from a lot of years ago, and now we can see the result.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone else have a question?
Let me just interject.
Yep.
Just a quick addendum to Stefano's answer. The audio modeling and software instruments are all, to my ears, absolutely perfect. And they have instruments for nearly all orchestral winds and bow strings. And you just have to play them, especially under expressive control, to know how marvelous they are and how samples don't come anywhere close. They're just perfect. And I encourage everybody to try them. If you want perfect expressive instruments, they're just wonderful.
Thank you, Roger. That was very, very good. Okay, we've got 2 more questions, so we'll ask your question.
Okay, so I'm wondering what data communication inside those instruments, because MIDI cannot do that, and so is MIDI 2 something like, because so many parameters going on?
So I'll repeat the question. The question is, what kind of control protocol is happening in the instrument? And this is definitely a good question for Roger. The assertion is that MIDI might not be able to do this, but I think Roger will have something to say about that. And also, Stefan, we'd like to hear something about how you do control within your instrument as well. So let's start with Roger, and then we'll come to you. So Roger, did you get the...
Sure. I did, yes. The instrument is a MIDI controller, as is the continuum, as is the rolling seaboard, and other expressive instruments like this. So we're sending out standard MIDI messages. If you have pressure, you can use a control change message, but the standard message is pressure messages or aftertouch, like channel pressure or aftertouch, or poly aftertouch. And then for pitch slides, left and right, you just use standard pitch bend messages. And then for the y-axis, the third dimension, you use standard control change number 74. So that makes it compatible with every single MIDI synthesizer in existence. However, if you want to be able to do polyphonic pitch bends, like this, then you have to be able to, you have to use a new system called MPE for MIDI polyphonic expression. And all that does is a very simple trick that has actually existed since MIDI 1.0 in 1984. It sends each note over its own MIDI channel, rotating through the channels. And there's about 130 or more synthesizers now that are compatible with this MPE edition. And so it's very easy to find synths now these days that have MPE compatible. But if you don't need polyphonic pitch bends, you can still get polyphonic pressure over a single channel, and you can still get pitch bends for solo play, and as far as pressure and y-axis as well. And Stefan?
So, Roger, thank you for that answer. I'm glad that you highlighted MPE, because most people may not know this, but Roger originated the idea of MPE, and as you pointed out, there are many, many synthesizers that are using this technology now. So, Stefan, last month you and I talked on the phone, and you told me a little bit about how you do control internally. I think that'd be very interesting to hear.
Yeah, so our instrument is not connectable, so we were kind of lazy. I have a big respect for people who develop protocols and try to be connectable or make things connectable. But in our case, I wanted it to be really a standalone thing, but not without any distraction, where you can, where you have to think about how to control something or so. So our internal protocol is highly resolved and has a high, but it's Actually, we are because of the internal structure, we are still using kind of MIDI, but we were using 14-bit or 28-bit as we needed, and we just abuse the MIDI messages for for our very private thing.
You improved it.
Yeah, it's a thing that we said, okay, we need, I don't know, kind of velocity message or pressure message or so, and we defined it for ourselves, so it's a lazy way, yeah, to do it, and it's a self-contained or isolated system, therefore we don't need to care about anybody else.
Okay, and I'm just going to speak briefly for GeoShred. We internally, for our own model, we actually use floating point numbers, but we can take MIDI and it works just fine. It's pretty much the same thing. So, okay, you had a question back there?
Yeah, for a synthesis engine with many feedback paths like you showed for the C15, especially if you can go through effects like distortion, as you said, you can essentially generate chaos, right? It can blow up out of control, and that can be really confusing for a novice user. Do you do anything to protect users from essentially creating patches that go wild and like never stop?
So I'll repeat the question. So basically, due to the feedback paths in C15, it's possible to create a chaotic patch. Do you do anything to protect users?
Yeah, one of the things, of course, that you can end up with very high levels if you don't saturate enough. So we use, in the signal path, we use lots of saturation and things by this stay under control, I think. You know, you never get something killing your ears or the speakers. Actually, it's I was surprised by myself that when we, because it's a long evolution, so I was modifying reactor structures more and more until we got this sound engine, and yeah, I always took care that things they behave well for me, and I think they behave well for the users.
Great, thank you. Okay, do we have a question from somebody else? Okay, Don.
Okay, have you guys thought about physical modeling the human voice?
I want to give that one to Julius. Julius, are you there?
Yeah.
You should be the one to talk. Okay, Julius is not there anymore. That would be.
I'm here. I was muting. It took me a while to find my mute button.
Okay, so Julius, the question is about physical modeling of the human voice. Have people thought about doing that? And I think you might have a really good answer for that.
Yeah, this has been around since I would say the early 20th century at Bell Labs. So Bell Labs got on the problem of modeling speech in as early as 1920 something. Homer Dudley was developing the vocoder, and that was kind of a source filter model where you had bandpass filters for the vocal tract. But there were also terminal analog models. And at Bell Labs, in the latter part of the 20th century, they worked on what are called articulatory speech synthesis models, where you model the entire anatomy of the vocal tract and the vocal production process. And so it's one of the most studied areas in all of technology because of Bell Labs and because of the success of the telephone. And it was just a huge research. And so you can find all the literature you want in that area. But then, of course, there's the trade-off of computational efficiency, real-time versus fidelity. And so right now on your cell phone, you've got probably GXM. Last I knew was using LPC, which is linear predictive coding, which has a kind of physical model story. And to really make it a physical model, you just have to get a good glottal pulse estimate. And we had a PhD student here named Huiling Liu, who did that somewhere around 2002 or something like that. Her thesis is on the CCrma website. So just, and she goes by Vicky, so you probably just search for Vicky Liu, L-U, speech synthesis. And she had really, really good pressed versus breathy phonation. And so I can talk about it for a while, but I think it's a really great example of pushing linear prediction, which is maybe the most applied signal model for speech, into the realm of physical modeling. And so all it takes is getting a good glottal pulse model. and then the filter, the all-pole filter in linear prediction will spontaneously become a vocal track model. But until you do that, linear prediction normally requires an impulse or a white noise at its input, and so you get a very distorted filter. It's not really a vocal track model. And then I have to mention Perry Cook's research, which builds on John Kelly and Carol Lothbaum's work at Bell Labs, which was physical modeling by just manipulation directly of a waveguide representation in real time on a next computer. So you can find his thesis. He had his double E thesis here at Karma a while back. So there's quite a bit of stuff. Send me an email and I'll pull the whole file and send it to you. So I'll give you all my references.
I'll add one thing to this. The deck that I mentioned earlier that is about the history of physical modeling has a really good example of most of the examples that Julius mentioned here. Homer Dudley and Sheila by Perry Cook. And so if you get that deck, the sound example is in there. We can take one more question, then we need to wrap it up. Go ahead.
Stefan, is there a C15 at the show somewhere?
Yeah, come around.
Yes! That's it.
10,500.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for coming to the panel.